It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello and welcome to this Tuesday, November 14th edition of RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, because it's Tuesday. It's Tuesdays with Lyndsey. But of course, it's Tuesdays with Lyndsey every day this week. Because, of course, the team is in Germany at Agritechnica, and let me tell you, they are having an absolute blast. So, on today's show, as promised, you will hear from Mr. Tom Wolf. He is going to join Shaun Haney for a discussion that you'll hear later on today's show. Some really cool stuff on what they're observing there, so that's pretty neat. Also on today's show, we're going to hear from Bill Greuel. He's the CEO of Protein Industries Canada, and they've got some pretty big goals happening in the plant protein and plant ingredient sector, and so we get all the details from Bill on the road to 25 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B, so we'll see where that ends up. And we have a product spotlight today, so Roger Gunning is going to join me to talk about boron, and that's, to be honest, probably as close as we're going to get to any sort of agronomy today, which makes me a little bit sad, in that, hey, I love agronomy. All right, but thank you so much for getting some great feedback from last week's show and from this one as well. Unsurprisingly, and later in the show I will do some news and there's a couple updates to cover, but unsurprisingly, the feedback from the Friday show talking about Bill C-234 and the Senate dragging their feet on this one has really been, as it should be, pretty firm that this should not be happening. And honestly, Canadians outside of agriculture should be kind of ticked about this, everybody. This is not how government is supposed to work. This is, a lot of politicking, and as Sherilyn said on Friday, politics often is what turns people off about policy. But we need policy. We need bills to pass. We need good legislation to be written. But honestly, what the Senate, or what some of these senators is doing to hold up this bill, is absolutely, no question, it's wrong. And honestly, I'd like to see there actually be some sort of repercussions for the breach in protocol, because as I talked with Deb Stark just a couple weeks ago about good governance, this is an exact example about why it's so important that we have actual rules of engagement for the way certain things are supposed to work. And honestly, this is a scenario where knowing, the points of order and how things are supposed to be was really important. But in this case, totally ignored anyway. So, that is one thing that at this point, we're probably not going to see anything new happen till next week, till November 21st is the soonest we could see something happen again on Bill C-234. So in the meantime, as many groups are calling for, get in touch with your MP and let them know that you want to see this bill pass and see what's going to happen. I will say, though, just sort of off the cuff and interestingly, I feel like the Prime Minister has been really quiet for the last little while, but definitely it sounds like there is a lot of pushing and shoving sort of going on behind the scenes. There's talk of several MPs, and of course, Environment Minister being one of them, that's, really upset about this and does not want to see this bill go forward. But, we did see the exemption of home heating oil of the carbon tax for the eastern side of the country. So, will we see this happen in different provinces for different aspects of what we're paying for? Let's face it, the affordability crisis just makes a carbon tax really hard to swallow on just about everything, let alone how much it costs for grain drying. And certainly really appreciate, been hearing from some farmers, we're seeing it on social media, they're sharing what their bills look like and what that carbon tax is costing them even for 24 hours. It's hundreds of dollars. And this is, quite honestly, it's just a tax at that point, because that money is not getting reinvested into, I think someone joked and said, heat pumps for grain drying. That's not happening. So yeah, it's incredibly serious, and we really do need to do something about it. Okay. There's a few other things that I will talk about later. We did have a canola Council of Canada announcement today, expecting some SCAP funding. So that's the Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership funding. So these are the cluster fundings. We should see more of that coming out. And we did get some confirmation of a rumor on whether or not Bayer is going to spin off Bayer Crop Science. So that came up as well. So stick around to the end of the show. We'll have that discussion as well. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and I don't think we played a clip of it yet, but last week we published a new episode of the Mind Your Farm Business podcast. Now, this is, I think it's episode 91, I want to say. So if farm management is on your list of things you want to improve, this is a podcast that you absolutely need to subscribe to and to download. Shaun Haney is your host. He tackles some really big picture, but even all the way down to like very detailed oriented stuff. But last week's talk was just absolutely incredible with Dan Quiggle and talking about leadership. And it's not a super long podcast, so I highly recommend it. It won't take you long to get through it, but he's got some really key points in there that I think apply especially to farmers, in that he talks about being the same kind of person in the boardroom, the same integrity at home, the same way you treat your staff, and the same way you treat others, and basically recognizing that it's not really okay to take out your frustration from work on your family, or it's not okay to treat your employees and take out your frustration on your employees. You need to recognize that as a leader, there has to be some compartmentalization. You need to prioritize the person in front of you, and you really need to think about, how am I treating this person, especially if there's someone that I really care about or is a valued member of my team. And I gotta tell you, it sort of made me, sort of giggle a little bit in a guilty way, in that, as a farmer and working with my partner, we have livestock. So if anyone's ever joked about, you're not responsible for what you say when you work livestock, this just sort of struck a chord with me, that so often we carry sort of the frustration of the day or the stress of a long harvest season like we're having here in Ontario, and sometimes we take it out on the people who really are not responsible for it in any way, like our family, and they deserve the best version of us that we can muster. I'm not saying you pretend everything's fine when it's not, but it's also, honestly, sometimes we take out our aggression on the people closest to us, and that's not real leadership either. And in farming, we've got family and the business all wrapped up into one, and it's just something to remember. So check that out. That's Mind Your Farm Business. You can find it on RealAgriculture.com. You can find it on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Go check it out. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Give your soybeans an obvious advantage with Lalfix Pro Yield Liquid Soybean from Lalman Plant Care. Its exclusive formulation amplifies nitrogen fixation. That means a greener, higher-yielding soybean crop and enhanced ROI. The single bladder means there's no mixing, and the available collapsible cube simplifies shipping. It's the inoculant with a difference you can see. Contact your Lalman sales representative today.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
There's power, and then there's superpower. Advancing the unstoppable superpower of pre-seed from New Farm. Take control, eliminate weed competition, and start clean in spring. Manage weeds early in canola, cereals, and pulses. Conquer, Goldwing, Thunderhawk, and Blackhawk EVO. Convenient formulations and multiple modes of action. Add more power to glyphosate, more benefits to your burn down. Go to newfarm.ca/burndown.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Tuesday. Yes, it is Tuesdays with Lyndsey, but again, it's Lyndsey all week. So there you go. This segment is brought to you by Co-op. Co-ops, grown with purpose, recognizes how your farm brings sustainability, agronomics, and safety to our food, community, and environment. What you do matters. Make it count. Contact your local Co-op Grow team member to learn more. All right, it is time now to talk about Yes, growth in the plant ingredient and plant protein sector. Let's talk about this road to 25 billion. With me now, Bill Greuel. He's the CEO of Protein Industries Canada. Welcome here, Bill.
Thank you, Lyndsey. It's great to be on.
All right. So your organization has some pretty exciting news, a pretty lofty goal, in fact, with the roadmap to 25 billion. What is this all about?
Yeah, so, as an organization, what we do, Lyndsey, is we manage an innovation investment fund aimed at de-risking innovation to grow Canada's plant-based food, feed, and ingredient sector. But over the course of the last 5 years that we've been doing that, we've realized that our companies need more than just de-risking of innovation or support from us for doing the work that they do. And so we set out to really talk to our members and learn deeply what it is that they need. And the result of that is the road to 25 billion. So this is a larger strategic plan for the growth of the sector. You could think about it in terms of industrial policy or economic policy. These are the things that we need to do to drive forward and increase the value-added agriculture sector in Canada to a $25 billion of annual revenue.
Now, is there a time where you're saying here's where we want to get to that 25 billion, or is it here's the steps? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. And so we think we can achieve this goal by 2035. So that's, when we started this project, it was a 15-year horizon. We're down to a little bit less than that. But, the reason we put a time horizon on this is there's a lot of countries out there vying for investment in ingredient manufacturing, putting really big incentives ahead for companies to offset the cost of construction and being very aggressive in terms of attracting investment infrastructure in ingredient manufacturing. So we believe there's a sense of urgency to build this out for Canada, and that's partly why we've put the time horizon at 2035. Well,
and as they say, goals without deadlines are just dreams, right? So this is pretty important. Yeah, you need to have some sort of line in the sand that you're working towards. Now, walk us through. We will share, so any of you who want to head on over to RealAgriculture.com, we are going to share a link to the actual graphic. You've got some great graphics that go along with this, a report that sort of lays this all out. But there's several points along this road to 25 billion and that are outlined. What do you think are perhaps the most immediate ones that need addressed?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll take a step back and just, one of the things we did this last week, we spent, 3 days in Ottawa talking to senior government officials and both elected and senior government officials. And our top line goal there was, rolling out the roadmap, but it was really about making the case that value-added agriculture in the agriculture sector is something that can be a transformational sector of growth for the economy. We all in Western Canada watch with great interest as the federal government invests in electric vehicle battery manufacturing. I'm not going to question whether that's a good or bad investment, but at the same time, we see value-added agriculture as a sector that can deliver as much to Canada's economy as the EV batteries. And here's a sector that can deliver economic growth in spite of what's happening on a global basis. We're seeing increased global competition. We're seeing increased geopolitical tension. We're seeing population growth and climate change. So here's a sector that can grow in spite of all the things that are happening in the world today. And so that was the backdrop for the conversation in Ottawa. It seems to be resonating very well. But to your specific question, what we did with officials and what we're trying to do with the roadmap is point to, what are the 5 areas that we need to address in order to grow this sector to $25 billion of annual revenue. So we can pick those apart, but I mean, that's kind of the backdrop to the roadmap and why we were in Ottawa, just to make that case that, hey, don't forget about agriculture. It's a growth sector for the economy.
So really good point, right? And that I think sometimes as an industry, we get quite frustrated actually when we see perhaps, a lot of government backing or a lot of money flowing into potentially a development or a sector where, when we sort of stand back and say, we can do great things too. You need to believe in us. So that very much, how you did mention it was, received. How well received was that? Do the powers that be in Ottawa recognize the potential of this sector, do you think?
Yeah, so I've been knocking around this for a long time in things like the federal, provincial, territorial work I used to do with the Ministry of Agriculture in my job here at Protein Industries Canada. I think the winds are changing a little bit in Ottawa. I think that the powers that be are recognizing that this is a growth sector of the economy. And we're getting more traction with people at ISED. We had an opportunity to meet with senior officials at the Department of International Trade. We met with finance. We even had time with the Prime Minister's office, their strategic lead on agriculture and food. I do think the mood and the recognition is changing, that agriculture is on the radar more than it's ever been in my career.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the milestones along this road to 25 billion, you've got, points like new development for local communities and opportunities for farmers to sell crops closer to home. Obviously, value add processing is a key part of this. You're talking 10 to 15 new plants across Canada. That's significant. How is that all going to happen? Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point, it is significant. And I said in my LinkedIn post on this, I don't think we have all the answers in this roadmap. It's going to take a lot of collaboration. But in order to drive at that level of value-added processing in Canada, which is an incremental 2 to 2.5 million metric tons, no small feat, because that's a capital requirement of $7 to $9 billion. We think there's really 5 things that we need to do, not just as Protein Industries Canada, but as a sector, in order to drive forward the growth in value-added processing. We really need to take a hard look at innovation policy in Canada and how it is we're funding and supporting the commercialization of Canadian IP. We think we need to do a lot of work around creating enabling regulations, and that sounds like a broken record. I know that everybody who issues a report like this in the agriculture sector talks about it. I think we've got a pretty good plan and some specific regulations that need addressing. We need to invest in critical infrastructure in this country. Again, that's a pretty common theme when you talk about growth of the agriculture sector. But for value-added processing, there's some very specific things that we need around creating toll processing and building out our scale-up infrastructure for ingredient manufacturing. We think there's a real need for market development. This is an export play for us in Canada, and we need to be out there ensuring that countries in Europe, in the U.S., and in Asia really understand the value proposition that our ingredients are bringing. And finally, and probably the biggest one, Lyndsey, is that we need to figure out ways of incentivizing and unlocking private sector capital into this sector, because as I say, this is not a small investment. This is not a venture capital play. This is long-term, patient institutional capital that we need to grow out ingredient manufacturing in the country.
Now, the roadmap certainly reaches far beyond Saskatchewan. Absolutely. And as you say, critical infrastructure, we need to be talking about processing. We have processing outside of Saskatchewan as well. But when we think plant protein, obviously Saskatchewan is the home of our pulse industry, and so is going to be so important to delivering on this. What do you think this could mean for Saskatchewan itself?
Yeah, well, I think for a province like where I'm in, we've often talked about the fact that we have, 40% of Canada's farmland, and that should translate into a processing industry. But the reality is, when companies are looking at making a siting decision around where to build infrastructure, having access to the raw commodity is only one component. There's a lot of other things that they need in order to be successful. And so what can it mean for Saskatchewan? I think if the provincial governments here, and this probably is true for all provincial governments, can do a better job of coordinating with the federal government on creating a suite of incentives that drive at attracting capital and investment, it could mean significant value to any province that takes ownership of this. And, we've got some thoughts and ideas around what that might be. And again, I know governments don't like to hear incentives and you need to put money on the table, but the reality is with the Inflation Reduction Act, the creation of opportunity zones in the U.S., it's really competitive out there, and we need to get our head around exactly what that means. And so I might not be answering exactly your question. I may be going to solutioning as to how we can drive that capital investment in the prairie provinces. But maybe to bring it back to your question, I think this can mean, if we believe the industry is worth $25 billion by 2035, certainly for the provinces that get ingredient manufacturing right, that's billions of dollars of revenue created in the provinces where commodities are produced.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. All right. The website is theroadto25billion.ca. If you want to look at more, you can download the roadmap and dig into it. Bill Greuel with Protein Industries Canada, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
Proven Seed is at home in your soil. With the widest seed portfolio in Western Canada, our seed is developed and tested on and for your local acres. Our hybrids and varieties are tested by hundreds of growers, so we know how our seed will perform in your local conditions. Better returns start with seed that belongs where it's planted, and this seed belongs here. Secure your seed today at your local Nutrien Ag Solutions or visit provenseed.ca to learn more.
Have you heard of Vantage Ag? They're a manufacturer and distributor of liquid fertilizers, and they want to work with you. They want to learn more about you and your goals and build a relationship centered around high-value products and a customized approach. For more information on Vantage Ag, call Paul Sinkovich at 778-919-3370 or visit vantage.ag to get started today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Tuesday. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and as promised, every day this week you're going to hear a different report from Agritechnica. So the team, Shaun Haney, Jay Stroeve, Bernard Tobin, and Rylan Haney are all in Hanover, Germany this week, covering the entire show. It's an absolute marathon. They're exhausted, but they're doing a phenomenal job. All of our coverage is brought to you by Optimum Gly, a new canola trait technology from Corteva AgriScience. And today's report features a friendly name to this show and, of course, to Real Agriculture. It is Tom Wolfe with Agrimetrics and Sprayers 101. So Shaun and Tom, of course, met up in Germany, which is kind of a small world, isn't it, to talk about some of the advancements that they're seeing and perhaps not seeing at the show this year.
Shaun Haney here with Real Agriculture. We're at Agritechnica 2023 in Hanover, Germany, brought to you by Optimum Gly, a new canola trait technology from Corteva AgriScience. And look who we found. An old friend. It is Tom Wolfe, Sprayers 101 and Agrimetrics. Tom, you enjoying Agritechnica?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. It's been a blast, really. It's always fun to be here.
Yeah, this is like Christmas for you. Getting to walk around, see all the different sprayer manufacturers. Of course, we've got Horsch behind us. They've been getting a lot of attention with the leaf sprayer. Talking to all the different nozzle companies. What are some of the things that have stuck out to you from this year's Agritechnica?
The year-to-year change isn't really that big. We got to be looking at the long-term trends here, and the long-term trends are that the Europeans are really having a close look at pulse width modulation. They are building larger sprayers that are suitable for Canada, and they're looking at the export market to Canada, I guess. We're looking at, I guess, still a very heavy emphasis on government regulations, really driving innovation, saying you can do this, but you can't do that, and sprayers are built accordingly. So that's kind of what the key difference is, but I don't see a groundbreaking new sprayer here.
Yeah, it does. You mentioned the size. You do notice that. you'll walk up to a very large sprayer. Yesterday we were at, I can't remember, it's a French company, Bertude? Yeah. They don't export to North America. Star was another one. Huge sprayer. Don't export to North America. And they're Brazilian. But they got these massive sprayers. There is a lot of potential for other manufacturers that we're not even familiar with in North America to maybe enter the market.
It's a really interesting situation. Germany has been subsidizing sprayers that meet their standards to some high degree for the last several years, and it's really supported the manufacturing sector here to build these larger and more, environmentally sound sprayers with, all kinds of closed transfer systems and recirculating booms and that kind of thing. Those subsidies are going to end. They're coming to an end, for Germany at least, in 2024, which means that capacity that has been built to support that sales volume may need to go elsewhere. So we're thinking maybe we'll see even more of these. In fact, I spoke to Kvenland, a Dutch sprayer manufacturer, known for their plows actually, but they also make 2,000 sprayers a year, and they are looking at coming to Canada.
New competition, and competition's good. It actually spurs innovation.
Absolutely. I think that's really what's been missing. We have a lot of brand loyalty in North America, but it's not necessarily driven by innovation. So I think we can benefit from that as a whole, and hopefully prices will also come down a little bit.
What about on the tech side? Seek and Spray, See and Spray, however you want to put that. There's a lot of booths that say, well, we have a camera and spot spraying, and there's a lot of that. It's hard for me. It's hard to sort of get through some of the noise and try to figure out who's real and who's kind of not. What stood to you in that area?
Yeah, it's become commoditized in the last 4 years, really. Last time I was here in 2019, I found 7 artificial intelligence people that were working with sprayers, and some of them were undercover. They weren't even exhibiting. And now everybody's got AI of some sort or other. I went to one of the faraway pavilions where they have universities, and they have university exhibitions of students and so forth. Well, everybody's doing AI, absolutely everybody. I went to one, they were using a vacuum to suck slugs off lettuce using AI. The sky's the limit for what you can do with this thing. Right. Horsch behind us here is doing AI. They've been doing it for 4 years, and it doesn't seem to be a real big obstacle to overcome. I thought, are you engaging highly expensive specialists here? Are you subbing out the stuff? And they said the algorithms are actually available on the internet. Yeah. So maybe it's training. Training is the expensive part. And there's the other thing, like we're maybe in a euphoric stage of spot spraying. Everybody's got it on their product, but are they actually delivering an accuracy and a reliability and a cost that is actually going to have resonance in the marketplace? We don't even know that yet. So there should be a little bit of skepticism about this whole development. Yeah. Well,
and also regulatory bodies updating labels. That's one of the other barriers, I would imagine, when it comes to that technology.
Absolutely. Look at Germany again. They're known for being really highly regulated, and so they're currently grappling with the issue of how does a spot sprayer drift compared to a broadcast sprayer, and how do we calculate buffer zones for such a sprayer, and how do we calculate all of these environmental impacts when we don't really know what proportion of the field they're treating. We did a little thing with Carl DeConnick Smith a few weeks ago on the agronomist, and he said the outside rounds actually are the ones where he uses up the most liquid on his spot sprayer. He has a weeded system in Rosetown, and he says, you may use maybe up to half of your total volume of the field on the 2 outside rounds, and then because of the population is there. So how do you assess that for drift risk? You really can't, and so they're grappling with it.
Okay, the other one that stood out to me, we spent some time yesterday with DGI Agriculture looking at drones. There's a number of different Chinese drone manufacturers that are here. Where does that fit into spraying now and in the future?
So I view it from 2 different perspectives. It's been quite useful in Asia, where this pesticide application has been largely handheld at high risk to the operator. They're walking through their fields, and they're walking perhaps on steep slopes, terrace slopes, and those kinds of things. It's hard labor, and the drone has been a real boon to them, being able to automate that and reduce the risk to themselves. So it's been good for them. in North America and Europe and elsewhere in the world, we've been using boom sprayers, and we've really had a relatively safe application environment, and we have had good distribution of the spray quality and so on and so forth. For us, the drone has become a challenge because we can't really achieve the same uniformity and the same capacity and the same, standardized, quality that we've come to expect. So, a step forward for Asia, possibly a step backwards for the rest of us. Yet there's still enthusiasm. I mean, they do have a place. Are they going to be a spot sprayer, so to speak, a niche sprayer? Possibly. Will they be a broadcast sprayer? I think it's too soon to tell.
Yeah, it could be the DJI. I think it was a 40 kilo load on their large drone they debuted here. Maybe that's working in tandem with a larger sprayer. I don't know. It seems like there's stuff to still be worked out.
We'll see. Yeah, for us, it's the quality of the deposition that is the issue for us. We want to have uniformity. That's a fundamental building block. If you have some region of the spray swath that is underdosing by, say, up to 50%, you have coefficients of variation of 50%, which is unacceptable, really, in a boom spray world. But we do see it from time to time in the drone world, and we rarely get better than a CV of, say, 25%. That's really challenging to get better than that. When you're underdosing by, say, 50% in one place in the swath, you have to up your rate to get the control that you've come to expect. And, of course, that's wasteful. And so, we'll see how that goes. Again, all these technological cycles have a euphoric phase. We're in a lot of those right now.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of Agritechnica. I appreciate you taking some time for us. All the best to you.
Thank you, Shaun. Great to be with you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. And as mentioned, of course, tune in again tomorrow, 4:30 Eastern, right here on Rural Radio, channel 147, to hear what we'll cover tomorrow from Agritechnica. And in the meantime, if you want to see some of the equipment from the very strange, the very large, the very cool, head on over to our YouTube channel. We've got everything there, and frankly, we'll just be adding more and more. I think at this point, they've already filmed more than 50 videos, so head on over there as well. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and I will be back with today's product spotlight right after this.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure Oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup, weed control, field trial results, yield strategies, and so much more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF, Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest podcast today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is time for today's product spotlight. Joining me, we've got Roger Gunning. He's the sales manager for agriculture North America with U.S. Borax. Roger, welcome here.
Hey, thank you, Lyndsey, for having me on your show today.
All right, let's talk spring. Because who doesn't want to talk spring before we've even gone through winter? But let's talk spring planning, spring planting. What do we need to know about boron fertilizer decisions as we start planning for next spring?
Oh, yeah. I'm already looking forward to spring. No one likes the cold weather, right? But, I think first the farmer needs to figure out if they even need boron. I mean, that's one of the biggest questions that we got to get answered. And I know I sell boron fertilizers, but if you don't need it, you shouldn't waste your time nor your money. And so that's why I always recommend a soil test be done to know really what the boron levels are. And then I always ask the farmer to consult with their local advisor. And research has shown that a routine soil test can help determine the right rate for boron. So that test or that information can help a farmer save money both on the testing and the amount of boron they may need.
Now, if that soil test does suggest that boron fertilizer is needed, what other factors come into play in that buying decision?
Sure. I think a couple key points one needs to consider is the product high in plant available nutrients, and is it low in say heavy metals like an arsenic? Our boron products at US Borax are 100% plant available, and we refine our borates to remove heavy metals, including arsenic. So with US Borax products, you're getting boron. You're not getting added fillers. You're not getting impurities. With other products on the market, we've seen only part of the product is plant available, and arsenic levels can be as high as 1,500 parts per million. So now, if a grower compared that, say, with Granubor, that is 100% plant available, with an arsenic level that's less than 5 parts per million.
Now, you mentioned if you don't need it, you don't need to buy it. US Borax is not going to oversell you on that fertilizer. Now, and you've made the difference that not all boron products are created equal, for sure. What else should a grower consider in buying your products?
I think a couple things, Lyndsey, flexibility and expertise. Depending on a grower's application, our products, say like Granubor, can be mixed with NP and K blends, or Solubor with your pesticide program. So a grower's not having to go back and have a separate application. And then second, we've done research. Our research on refined products, including our dosage rates, really help a grower apply the right amount of boron. We really want to ensure that a grower's crops get the right rate of boron to increase their yield, but not too much so they're wasting their time or their money. And I'm always available for questions. But Lyndsey, one last item that I really think we need to cover, and it's really a challenge that I saw with ag retailers experience from growers last year. I had several calls last spring from growers asking for next day delivery for Granubor or Solubor. And ag retailers really need to know a grower's crop plans for Granubor or Solubor to have the product available when they need it this spring. So I really want to encourage growers to go and visit with their ag retailer in the off season for their Granubor and Solubor spring needs.
That planning ahead piece is just, it's always been important, but I think you're exactly right, especially the last few years have really showed us that the growers that plan ahead and work those relationships with their ag retail are not going to be disappointed. They're going to have the products they want, the products they need, and they're going to be there when they need them. But absolutely, that conversation is just so important going ahead as we plan for 2024. All right, Roger, those interested, where could they go to get more information?
Oh, thanks, Lyndsey. I'm available. Give me a call, 773-923-7420. And we have tons of information on our website, agriculture.borax.com.
Perfect. All right, Roger, thanks so much for joining me for today's Product Spotlight, and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and this segment is brought to you by Alliance Seed and CDC Endure Oats. Top yields, excellent disease resistance, and the quality end users ask for all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure is available through Alliance Seed, authorized retailers, or visit allianceseed.com. All right, it is that time where I take a deep breath, try and be brave, and do my best Calvin Hepner impression and try and read the news. So I envision myself like the characters in Late Nights on Air, trying to read ahead. Wait a minute. Has everyone read Late Nights on Air? It's a Canadian author, Elizabeth Hay. Fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's an older one. You might have to, dig through the library, go find it. But Late Nights on Air, it takes place in the North, and all about a radio station. And just trust me, it's a really good book. And also, I feel like, it should be part of the RealAg book club, but we kind of do things differently. We don't have like a real book club. Okay, I'm rambling, mostly because I'm avoiding doing the news. It's not my favorite thing. I'm not very good at it, but there are so many things happening that we simply have to tackle them, just so that you, our audience, are up to date on what's going on. So we're going to start south of the border in the U.S. There's a couple big stories there, and then we'll work our way into some Canadian news as well. Okay, so first and foremost, just off the hop, we are hearing that the Farm Bill in the U.S. will likely get that extension for 1 year to September 2024. I am not going to pretend to know all the ins and outs, but we did, of course, know that there is all sorts of risk to a government shutdown. And when that happens, of course, a lot of very key programs end for that time and money doesn't flow. And so we are hearing that the Farm Bill should get its extension to 2024. So that is good news. On the south of the border and yes, international stage, the rumors seem to be true. So if you heard us talking about this a little while ago about how Bayer, so Bayer AG is like the overarching company, Bayer was potentially going to spin off the agriculture branch of its company. And it's been flying around, some rumors, some facts, and now we have at least some confirmation that it is definitely on the table. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily what Bayer has said they are going to do, but Bayer CEO Bill Anderson has been quoted as saying in a November 8th earnings call with investors that one of the potential structural changes under consideration is spinning off Bayer Crop Science into its own company. So we will absolutely keep you up to date. The company is definitely facing some headwinds as far as revenue goes. And so they're having to look into some perhaps quite large picture structural changes to the company. So that is an option and definitely up in the air. So we'll keep you up to date. It does, of course, they did point out a few of the good news stories happening. And one of those, and this is where it relates to the U.S., one of those is, of course, launching the short stature corn in the U.S. for 2024. So we've covered this quite a bit on Real Agriculture. You can head over to RealAgriculture.com and read more about this story, as well as, of course, we link to some of the work being done on short stature corn. Coming north of the border and back here to Canada, we've got a few key things we're watching this week. As you heard on last week's show, as well as on the Friday Issues panel, we did talk about how Bill C-234, that's the bill that would exempt grain drying and barn heating fuel from the carbon tax. And this is a bill that in its second iteration still has received multi-party support. It is what Parliament wants to put forward, and the Senate is creating huge roadblocks to seeing this bill go through. So the Senate went clause by clause. They, as they should and as they do, they did put an amendment together that would have exempted, so it would have taken barn heating out of the exemption, and that was defeated. And so everyone in agriculture sort of looked like, a hiccup, but we're moving forward. And now we've got, as we've called them, the Senate shenanigans. But this is serious stuff, people. So this is, the Senate, the red chamber, supposedly, a very well-respected, or supposed to be an esteemed part of our political system, that really is playing some pretty dirty games here in not letting this bill go forward. And the Senate is not supposed to get in the way of what Parliament, that is all the elected officials who represent Canadians, has said they want. The Senate is supposed to be, yes, sober second thought, make sure it's well laid out, make sure it's, there aren't any unintended consequences and giant gaps, but they're not supposed to be there to change legislation or to put roadblocks, absolutely, in the way of what the will of Parliament is. And you cannot argue that Parliament has not wanted to push this through. Granted, yes, there's a huge part of the Liberal caucus that has not supported this bill and doesn't want it to go forward. We understand that, but it has multi-party support. It has passed. It should have gone to third reading and received royal assent. But here we are, an absolute mess on the Senate side. So, there is a path, as Kelvin reiterated, there is a path to the Senate potentially dragging their feet on this and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and we do not see this happen. So we haven't got an update since then. It is something we will continue to monitor, but just about every commodity group that this is important to, which is most of them, has already encouraged all their membership to get in touch with their MPs and to talk to their elected officials. And really, we've even seen now Pierre Poilievre, of course, leader of the opposition, leader of the Conservative Party, standing up and saying, this bill needs to move forward. And it's not often that we see, of course, something related to agriculture getting this much play in the leaders, or in the leaders' sphere. So that's interesting to see, but definitely an important one. Now, to that point also, just we do have that interview with Federal Agriculture Minister Lawrence MacAulay. That is up on RealAgriculture.com. MacAulay has voted against Bill C-234, and Kelvin did, as we mentioned, chatted with him about a few key things on the radar, including that 3% cut to the budget potentially. So we are waiting to hear where those cuts may come and how that might impact services or programs or anything like that. All right. We also had an announcement today. So along that line, we did have an announcement today from the Canola Council of Canada. And this is, of course, in relation to SCAP funding. So that's the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership. So Lawrence MacAulay was in Glenlee, Manitoba, just south of Winnipeg, to announce this next round of funding for the organization. And so there was announced a over $9 million going to the Canola Council of Canada through the AgriScience program, the clusters component. So this is the canola cluster. And this will be used to run critical research, the organization says, to keep the sector on the cutting edge so it can continue to grow sustainably while feeding and fueling Canada and the world. I do like that they've got the fueling in there. If you notice that. All right, so Chris Davison, of course, President and CEO, is quoted as saying, "Canola is a story of innovation and research partnerships are critical to unlocking canola's continued success." And for those who are curious or who like trivia, canola is Canada's second largest crop with approximately 20 million acres produced annually. Of course, that oscillates somewhere down to 18, somewhere up to 22. But it generates $13.7 billion in cash farm receipts in 2022. We'll see where 2023 lands. All right, so that is, I suppose we're going to see more of these rollouts and should, realistically, as the SCAP program gets rolling. Okay, also on the docket today, we did see Nuffield Canada has announced its 6 scholars for 2024, and that goes out to Sally Bernard, Cheryl Haskett, Lauren Benoit, who some of you here in Ontario will know Lauren, Matt McIntosh, some of you may also recognize that name, Rennie Grills, Tatum Claypool is the last. And so if you want to head on over realagriculture.com, we've got actually a bit of a write-up on each of them that was provided by Nuffield Canada and what they'll be studying. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Nuffield Scholarship Program, this is a program for people in their sort of early to mid careers, typically in the agriculture sector. So it does not have to be farm-based. It just has to be in the agriculture sector. And you get a travel bursary, a travel grant, to go and visit other farms or different places in the world that are doing something related to your topic. And then usually you have to write a report, do some either podcast presentations, those sorts of things in exchange. And I know we've certainly highlighted many of the Nuffield scholars here on this show and at Real Agriculture. Some really neat research that gets done. And this is, of course, outside of that, very academic space. This is, real world research and pretty cool for anyone who's been a Nuffield Scholar. You end up traveling around and meeting up with past scholars. You get to do some farm stays. It's pretty cool. So yeah, go check that out. That also went up this week and was announced. On the good news front, and for anybody who's looking forward to the end of the month, yes, it is Agribition in Regina. I love this show. I'm a bit sad since moving east. Haven't really ever been back to it, but when I lived in Saskatchewan, it was a must-do for that whole week. So of course we've got rodeo, we've got cattle shows, there's a trade show, but this year there's also going to be some innovation awards. And if some of these names sound familiar, there's good reason, because of course we've covered them here and we've done some videos on them, and there's some really cool stuff. This year some of the finalists include Herd Whistle Technologies, Smart Paddock, Farm Simple, Catalytics Incorporated, and One Cup AI, which I know we have covered here on the show. Judging is based on 3 criteria: technology, team and expertise, and market potential in finance. And so those will be handed out November 22nd during Agribition. So if you're there, check them out. I believe our very own Paige Holmquist Warner is going to be there as well. She's, I think, going to be showing some cattle. We'll see. So if you see her, say hello. But it's always neat to see ag tech being recognized, and certainly in the livestock sphere, I think sometimes we get a little forgotten about, I'll be honest. So yeah, so super cool to see that happening as well. All right, and for now, I'm going to leave it there. I've covered a lot. I'm actually quite proud of myself. There's always more to talk about, but we'll save some of that for later. Okay, so tomorrow, of course, I will be back with the Wednesday program. We're going to focus on some markets. I'll have Chuck Penner on, not just to talk about pulses, but also to talk a bit about India. So the situation there, of course, not great, but it's an incredibly important, and we heard that from Sherilyn Jolly-Nagel on Friday, just how important India is to Canadian agriculture and very much for Saskatchewan agriculture. So Chuck Penner will be on. We'll also, of course, have our hit from Agritechnica, so be sure to check that out. And we've got a product spotlight up for tomorrow as well. And I'm super excited. I know it's supposed to be all about markets, but we have a new series launching tomorrow, and this is called Farming Forward. And so here's your little sneak peek. This is a video series. The RealAg team has worked so hard all summer capturing some of these amazing interviews and videos and drone shots and so much cool stuff. It launches tomorrow, so I may pull a clip from that first video. It's on advanced grazing with Steve Kenyon, and this is Farming Forward. This is together with Farmers for Climate Solutions, and it's just a really cool series. We're going to focus on advanced grazing, on nitrogen management, and on cover crops. And so we've got some really cool interviews lined up under this Farming Forward banner. I cannot wait to share it with you all, so I'll probably pull a clip from that tomorrow. Okay, as always, if you've got feedback on the show, 1-855-776-6147, or you can zip me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com. And of course, find us across social media at Real Agriculture. Head over to YouTube. We've got a channel there. Hit subscribe, hit like, you know what to do. All right, everybody, have a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.